Okay, we mentioned yesterday, interesting, we were talking about the issue of traveling on a boat, on going on a boat before Shabbat, within 3 days of Shabbat, where our Gemara brought on Yutet Amar Aleph on 19a, it says about Ema Fliegen Besvina. It says on Yutet Amar Aleph, the art scroll, it's 19a3 on the right side, right? Tanra Banat. Because Ema Fliegen Besvina Pachot Mishlosha Yamim Kodem LeShabbat. Says you can't travel on a boat. You're not supposed to go on a boat within 3 days before Shabbat. The Gemara, interestingly, does not tell us why not. What is What is the reason why the rabbis say you cannot go on a boat within 3 days before Shabbat? Right? That's what the Gemara said. You can't go within 3 days before Shabbat. And the Gemara says Medvar Mamurim. That's if you're going morning Adam. We said it's if you go to Dvar Rishut. If you're traveling by boat for Dvar Rishut, which means you're going for boat for personal reasons, not just you want to go on a vacation, you want to go on a cruise. So it says you should not start the cruise within 3 days of Shabbat. We said yesterday, right? We're just reviewing that Gemara because I want to take out the Chafetz Chaim on the subject of Ledvar Mitzvah. But if you're traveling for mitzvah purposes, the Gemara says, then you could go ahead and you could go within 3 days Shabbat Dami, then you could go within 3 days before Shabbat, right? Let's say you're traveling for a wedding, right? You want to go to Misameh Chatan V'Kala, you're taking a voyage to Eretz Israel, you're going to learn Torah, and the boat's leaving on Thursday. You're allowed to go ahead and, now this boat you could go ahead and go on the boat on Friday, and Posek Imo, good morning, Ronnie. And we said, you tell the driver of the boat, you want to show him that you're not really interested that he should drive on Shabbat. You want to show that it. So what do you make up with you tell him this boat? You tell him, I want you to stop the boat. I don't want you to travel on Shabbat. But even if the boat travels on Shabbat, it would not be. You would not have to leave the boat. Meaning, when you enter the boat, you tell the guy that I don't want you to drive this boat on Shabbat. And the point of that is, and you want to show him that you're not. It's not like you want him. You're interested that he should, drive the boat on Shabbat. And even if he goes ahead and he does not stop the boat, he does not stop the boat. It is still fine. And again, because you're traveling within 3 days before Shabbat, you're doing it for Dvar Mitzvah. So, and then it says, you don't have to tell the captain anything. And so let's explain a little bit what's going on over here regarding this boat, right? We're saying you're entering the boat you're not supposed to enter the boat within 3 days before Shabbat. You shouldn't take your voyage, your cruise 3 days before Shabbat. When you tell the boat driver, I don't want you to I don't want you to drive on Shabbat. You're showing what you're saying is that it shouldn't see that I went into the boat that I wanted to travel on Shabbat, and that's why I went onto the boat. So I tell the guy, I don't want you to drive on Shabbat. Now, if the captain decides to drive on Shabbat, morning, Ralph. You don't.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. Good to see you. You're still all right. Now, let's understand what is the issue we're saying about traveling in a boat before if you go on a boat within 3 days of Shabbat. So the Chafetz Chaim has a very long, lengthy intro into this, into the Shulchan Aruch regarding this matter. He quotes our Gemara, and now also our Gemara says, "Umitzar l'tzidon." Right? If you're traveling, we said you should not go a 3-day trip within 3 days of Shabbat. You should not go onto the boat. You should not enter a boat Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now, but if the trip, if it's from Tzor Sidon, which is a 1-day trip, you could do it on Friday. It's a 1-day trip. Then I feel a be'erev Shabbat mutter. Even on Friday, I can enter the boat on Friday, and not because not because it's for business purposes, not because it's some special reason that rather as long because you're going to arrive before Shabbat. Meaning, if it's a trip, it's a 1-day trip to go from point A to point B. Let's say today, people take the Staten Island ferry, right? Is anybody going to say you can't take the Staten Island ferry on Friday, 3 days before Shabbat? There's no problem. Why is no problem? Good morning, Asaf, because you're going to arrive at your destination before Shabbat. The issues that we're concerned that we're going to see, one of the issues is because something's going to happen if you're going to be on the boat on Shabbat and you started traveling 3 days before Shabbat, there'll be an issue. People used to travel to Israel. You take 2 weeks on the boat to Israel, right? I mean, how did they, people would, it used to be taking, that's a long voyage, right? Years ago. So here, the Gemara says, if you're going from Tsar Sidon, so that's like going from New York to New Jersey or something like that, or whatever it is. Then even on Friday, you could leave. You could take the boat because you're going to get there before Shabbat. That's why you could go on Friday for whatever reason. If you want to go on a boat on a Friday, you want to go on a boat, let's say, for whatever reason, and if you're going to reach your destination before Shabbat, there's no issue. The issue is only if you go on a boat and you're going to still be on the boat on Shabbat. I wanted to clarify this point, and that's the issue of the Gemara. So, like we said, there are many reasons why you should not go on the boat within 3 days before Shabbat if you're going to still be on the boat on Shabbat. Some say maybe the Jew himself, if you go on the boat on Shabbat, before Shabbat, within 3 days, maybe there'll be, traveling on a boat is a dangerous voyage. It's not like today where it's not so dangerous. I mean, the Titanic was a dangerous situation. But if you go back to the old days, right, Ralph? Going on a boat 500,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, was even until recent times it's a dangerous thing. And by the way, it says that I just heard someone speak recently about Zvulan. Zvulan are the supporters of Torah. There's the Yisachar and there's what? Zvulan. Yisachar is the tribe that was studying Torah, and they had a partnership, Mr. Haber. What was the partnership? That the Zvulan, the businessmen said, you focus your day on learning. They said to Yisachar, we'll support you. And what was Zvulan? Zvulan was sailor. Where'd they make the money? They made the money by the boats. They traveled, they got the diamonds, they got the pearls. They were the 47th Street people, right? And the Zvulan, by the way, not everyone on 47th Street is successful. It's only if Hashem wants them to be successful, are they successful. So Zvulan were known to be very pious people. Morning, Nathan. Why were they known to be very pious? Because when you have to travel, if your profession is constantly out in the outdoors and the danger, it's a dangerous profession. It's, what did they say? There's no atheist, so to speak, in a foxhole, so to speak. So here, not that there's any atheists among the Jewish people, but the level of piety was much greater when you always see the hand of Hashem in the storms and the hand of God. So therefore, the people of Zvulan were very pious, and therefore, because of their piety, they were in a great position to support Torah. They supported Yisachar because of that. So one issue is because if you go on the boat with it, we're doing now, we'll look at the Chafetz Chaim on the subject of traveling by boat within 3 days before Shabbat. So he says the issue, one reason why you're not supposed, what some say is because of the inherent danger of traveling by boat. If you go into a boat within 3 days before Shabbat, you might come to have to do something to save your life because of the like the situation of a boat. That's not that always things come up on a boat. Or even if you, the Jew, might not do something on Shabbat, a guy might have to do something for you, a malacha, an act of work for you on Shabbat. That's also an issue. So therefore, we wanted to, or we spoke about the issue of techumim, that we said you might be leaving, you can't go at a certain distance on Shabbat, and there might be some issue about that. Now, the Rif says, if the concern is that maybe there will be malacha, you're going to have to come to do work on Shabbat, if you go on the boat within 3 days of Shabbat, or someone else is going to do work for you, so then even more than 3 days before Shabbat, you should not be able to go on the boat. You should never be able to go on a boat that you're going to be on the boat on the Shabbat if the concern is that maybe work is going to have to be done for you, or you're going to have to do work. So don't put yourself in a position that you're going to have to mechalel Shabbat. You're going to have to desecrate the Shabbat. So therefore, he says that's not the reason why you can't go on the boat within 3 days before Shabbat. Is that clear what he says? It can't be. He says rather what we meant is bittul mitzvah oneg Shabbat. You're gonna miss out on the right. You're gonna miss out the enjoyment of Shabbat. But the first 3 days, a person has pain, distress because of the movement of the boat. And he quotes a pasuk. It says, you're like a drunken man. The way the boat is moving around the first 3 days, and therefore, and also not only because of the movement of the boat, also because of the smell that comes from the salty waters, salty oceans, that bad smell that comes out, and it takes 3 days for you to be accustomed to it, to be able to be comfortable and be able to be at yourself, enjoying yourself. And now, then he explains those poskim, those opinions that say that the reason is because we're concerned of malacha, is we're concerned that maybe if you're going to go into the boat within 3 days before Shabbat, they're going to come to do work for you, or you're going to do the work on Shabbat because of the dangers of boat sailing. He said, so how do you explain why if you go in the boat before 3 days before Shabbat? Because he says when you're within 3 days of Shabbat, that means that means Shabbat is in front of you. We mentioned that idea yesterday with Havdalah, that when you're within 3 days before Shabbat, Shabbat is in front of you, and there's more for you to be concerned regarding the upcoming Shabbat. But if you're earlier in the week, if you're Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, which is part of the previous Shabbat, we say you have a right to go ahead and go into the boat. So even though you might come to have to save yourself because of pikuach nefesh in the future, you might have to go ahead and do work, do a malacha on Shabbat because of saving a life. So he says that will allow you to put yourself in a time period that that the Shabbat is so much not in front of you, because you're early in the week. We allow you to put yourself in a situation that even if you might come to have to do work because of saving a life, you're not asked to hold back from doing a certain activity on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, since it's so much, since it's not connected to the next Shabbat, it's still connected to the previous Shabbat, even though you might opening yourself up to possible requirement to desecrate the Shabbat to save your life. So again, it's not that you're going to desecrate the Shabbat just, I'm going to, it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I don't have to worry about Shabbat because it's so early in the week. If I have to desecrate the Shabbat, it's all right. No, that's not the story. Desecration of the Shabbat would be to save your life, right? What will happen? Meaning something might happen. So that far, you don't have to be, we're not going to tell you not to enter the boat on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, because lest something comes up on Shabbat that you might have to come to save your life, and therefore you're going to do a malach on Shabbat, that far we're not going to tell you yet you can't go into the boat. However, the other opinions doesn't make that distinction, right? The Rif does not make a distinction whether you are going into the boat. If that would be the concern that maybe you're going to have to desecrate the Shabbat to save your life, the Rif does not make that say, okay, therefore, but Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, you don't have to worry about that. He does not make that distinction.
Rabbi, I have a question for you. Let's
Yes.
say you're accustomed, you may have said this already, you may have given us the answer, but what if you're accustomed to going on a boat? Could you still go on a Friday or a Thursday?
Right. So that would, I mean, you're saying a person who always has that,
Well,
meaning,
let's say you've gone 3 times and you've already gotten used to like the motion sickness or anything like that nature.
right. That's right. So it would seem, if the concern is only about Oneg Shabbat, if the concern is only about that you might come to not, you might not be able to enjoy yourself on the Shabbat. So maybe we'd have to look into it. Maybe according to that reason, that you would that would allow you to go on the boat on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But according to the other reason that maybe work will have to be done for you on Shabbat, it doesn't make a difference if you travel, frequent flyer, frequent traveler on the boat or not. Some work might have to be done.
Right.
It's
Okay.
interesting. The Shulchan Aruch takes the position that the reason is because of Oneg Shabbat, is because of enjoyment of Shabbat. The first 3 days you have, you wouldn't be able to enjoy yourself. He makes a distinction between. He says he makes a distinction, by the way, Ronnie, between traveling in oceans that are salty and rivers that don't have any pain. So he makes a distinction between the type. Say it again. That shaking. Oh, okay, so he talks about the Miyamim Hameluchim, but or maybe like you said, the rivers that don't have
a salty ocean and a freshwater lake that also has no motion. A freshwater lake, but they didn't talk about a lake.
Right, he talks about a river. He talks about a river that there's no, like maybe there's no distress, right? It's a very smooth ride,
It's calm.
So that therefore now the question would be regarding us today, right? So we'll take out the Yalkut Yosef. Now, Nathan, I clarified a point I wanted to, from what we said yesterday. We said when you go from Sor to Sidon, remember we said yesterday, there was a Yom HaShuk, Rashi says. And yesterday, I thought that the reason why the allowance to go from Sor to Sidon, because you go for business purposes, they allow it on Friday. It seems the reason is not because of that. The reason is because they would arrive before Shabbat. So they'll be off the boat before Shabbat. So therefore, it was just like you could go ahead and go on a boat on a Friday. I mean, this whole thing you can't go on a boat 3 days before Shabbat is because where are you going to be on Shabbat? You're going to be on the boat.
Planning on being home before Shabbat, it's irrelevant.
Right. So the Gemara is saying. So some say that there's a chidush that even if since you have the ability to arrive before Shabbat, that's good enough to go on the boat on a Friday. That would be the reason for it says Sar L'Tzidon, which is a small short trip, and if you can get there before Shabbat, it says if it's a small trip, the Shulchan Aruch says, like from Sar L'Tzidon, you're allowed to go on Friday in the morning because it's possible that you see the language. It's possible that you're going to reach the destination before Shabbat. And then he says there are places that have a custom not to travel in the boat on Friday at all. So in those places, then you can't travel any amount on Friday.
Rabbi, what about cruise ships today? They're like a week to 10 days.
Right. So those cruise ships, it would seem that based on what we're seeing here, they should not start the cruise. You should not start a cruise on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And in the Yalkut Yosef, in Simon Reish Mem Chet, you see, he says in Reish Mem Chet, he says like this. He says, if you have a boat, a boat that the captain of the boat and everybody's goyim, meaning he's coming, presume he's coming to say not an Israeli boat. I mean, if you're going to go into a boat and the captains are Jewish and it's an Israeli boat run by Jews, they're going to be doing malacha, they're going to be doing work for you on Shabbat. So you can't do that. You can't travel on a boat that they're going to do work for you, right?
If they're
what is it? I mean, you're saying they're doing. I presume that whatever malacha they're doing for themselves, they're also doing for you. You're also benefiting from a malacha of a Jew. I presume they're doing work. They're hired by you. They're acting on your behalf, right? So you can't have someone they're doing malacha for you. Right. So
how's it different going to a Jewish hotel?
Right, but to the Jewish hotel, the Jewish people that are running the hotel, they're not actively doing a melacha. They're not the ones that are running a hotel. They're not lining up, putting up an engine on Shabbat. But if the boat is run by Jews that are secular, and they're going to be putting on the engine on Shabbat of the boat, and running the boat, and driving the boat, that would seem to be a problem. That should be a problem. Now, if you are going on this boat that's traveling to Israel, and so Israel is a mitzvah to travel to Israel, so then you could go on Friday, enter this boat, this non-Jewish boat, or if you're going to you want to go to yeshiva or whatever you're going to for mitzvah, you can enter on. But if it's not, but he says if it's for you want to take a voluntary cruise, you should not go in the boat within 3 days before Shabbat to take a cruise. And some say, even if you're traveling for parnasah, you're traveling for your livelihood, that's not called. It's not called tzarech mitzvah. So it seems like there is a discussion. Does parnasa, livelihood, have the same status of mitzvah? That just like if you're traveling for mitzvah, we allow you to go within 3 days before Shabbat in the boat. Would we allow for financial reasons as well? And then he says, but after, to address your question, what you asked about today, after Zman Hazeh, even in today's day and age, where we have amazing boats and amazing, everything is pretty smooth.
They're called ships.
They're called ships, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ralph. Ein lahakel. He says you should not be lenient. Today is Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, Yalkut Yosef, should not be lenient to take a cruise for personal reasons, not for mitzvah, within 3 days before Shabbat. But he addresses Ronnie's point. Ronnie, here we go. Unless people that are used to going on the boats, this is people that travel the world, right? He's going with the oneg.
You're talking about because of seasickness?
Right, because of seasickness, right, exactly. And because he's going, like Nathan says, he's going with the Shulchan Aruch's reason. Rabbi Yosef Cairo is very specific, is very focused on the reason of enjoying the Shabbat. That's the reason why the rabbis were concerned. you're not going to enjoy the Shabbat. But if you are used to being on a boat, and you don't get seasickness, you're great.
So they would argue not to go to some 14,000 foot height out on a Friday because you might still be altitude sickness on Shabbat.
Because it leaves because it keeps going, right? You feel it afterwards, right? Right. That's what it would sound like. Exactly. That you have to make sure you have to put yourself in a position that you have to enjoy the Shabbat. That's also, we have that halacha. You don't eat a large amount Friday afternoon, right? You have to save your appetite for Shabbat. You should enjoy the Shabbat, right? Person's not supposed to go ahead and have a big meal Friday afternoon, and then you have no appetite for Shabbat. And he says, so here he addresses what Nathan, the discussion that we were having before. So he says, if a boat that in the captains and the workers are Jewish, you should not allow to go on that cruise, on that boat, if they're going to, if the boat is going to be moving on Shabbat, even if the trip begins on Sunday, right? Which we made a distinction between the first three, the last morning, Max, Bruchim Avoyim, we welcome Max. So even if the boat is leaving on Sunday, David, right? Even if the boat is leaving on Sunday, there's still a problem if you go on the boat on Sunday. But if the Jews are the people that run the boat and they're not stopping the boat, Simon, you got to make sure they stop the boat. That Israeli boat, that you got to make sure they stop that boat on Shabbat. Because if they're going to be working on Shabbat, the travelers are benefiting from work that's done on Shabbat. That's what he says, Nathan. And so that's the, and then he says, of course, on Shabbat itself, you can't going to start a cruise on Shabbat itself, even if the people are non-Jews.
You change the lanes.
Um,
Because you're going to have seasick on Shabbat.
It could be you'll have seasickness on Shabbat, and there might be other reasons also, because maybe it might look like you hired them to do work for you on Shabbat. There might be other, you're starting on Shabbat. Maybe it looks like you hired them for Shabbat. There might be other reasons. He doesn't say the reason.
Also stop the traffic.
Yes. So that is a little bit about the. I think we have a much better understanding today than we had yesterday. Okay, so I think we have a much better clarity, I think, now in the boats, right?
They only recorded the boat example in the Gemara. It seems like there's the other debates, like where you go to like stuff. Like, what about like traveling to India on Friday? Like,
Right. So traveling to India now, when you're traveling to India, now what's going to happen? Now, what's the question?
you get to India on Friday, you're gonna be sick the first few days because the food's not.
So I think, like Nathan said before, you would have to deduce from this case anything that's similar. You should deduce anything that's similar that if the reason is because of seasick, there might be other, but there's what exactly the Shulchan Aruch says that's the concern. And therefore, you should deduce, and therefore you should learn out. You should not take a trip on a day of the week that if you're going to arrive on a Friday and it's going to affect your Shabbat because of whatever the circumstance is, that's not the way you're supposed to go into Shabbat.
And you also theoretically, according to this, should not have an operation Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You're going to still be in the hospital on Shabbat, and that's going to lead to less quantity of Shabbat. Whereas if you had earlier in the week, you had a strong likelihood of getting out and being at home and enjoy Shabbat more.
Right. And also you could say, according to the reason that says, don't go on the boat within 3 days because they're going to have to, more likely they're going to desecrate the Shabbat for you because of the, things that happen on a boat that you might have to do work to protect because of the whatever the word is, the way of the boat is, so it's dangerous. and they might have you're putting yourself in a position that most likely they're gonna have to desecrate the Shabbat. So don't put yourself in that position so close to Shabbat. So that would also be a logic. Don't take the operation because of that reason also. Because a guy goes to operation on Friday, then most probably they're gonna have to desecrate the Shabbat for you as a patient. You yourself might have to press buttons on Shabbat to get the nurse, right? And don't put yourself in that position. Take the operation with no one's ever needed in a way that you won't have to put yourself in a position. Even though, Rabbi, it's pikuach nefesh, it's a matter of life and death. Yeah, and the hospitalists are going to be doing things for him. They're going to be moving his bed, doing different things with his bed, or doing different things, poking him, taking whatever they're going to be doing malacha for him on Shabbat. But why, better to do that operation before Shabbat, early in the week, so you won't have to come to a situation that you have that malacha, put yourself in a position that you have to desecrate the Shabbat, even though it's for saving one's life. But don't put yourself. There are many things that we could deduce practical application of these 100%. And by the way, in general, I just want to share a general law regarding traveling on Friday. When you travel on Friday, if anyone travels on Friday, you have to reach your destination with enough time to do whatever is needed for the Shabbat. Meaning it's not okay, I made it before Shabbat. I came into the house before sunset, right? The car, right, David? We arrived at Deal before sunset. What? That's not good enough. I came home from work right before sunset. I made it. Did you take your shower? Did you change are you in proper clothing for Shabbat? Did you have time to daven mincha before Shabbat? You're going to get to the synagogue on time for Shabbat? I mean, you have to, meaning really the preparations for Shabbat. Is it all the food where it needs to be? Or I came into the house, was everything, whatever needs, your preparations for Shabbat have to also be, you have to give yourself time to arrive at your destination before Shabbat, to be able to have whatever is needed to have a proper Shabbat. So if I'm not going to I'm going to walk into my house before Shabbat, but not everything was done, but I arrived at my house before sunset, that's not the way to come into Shabbat. That's not the proper respect for the Shabbat. So therefore, people have to add that time into their traveling time. And in general, I think people, a lot of people like to use they double the time. If they're traveling by car, so they double the time on Friday, just in case. People have to figure out, be smart of how to, when you're traveling on Friday, if I ever travel on a Friday to Far Rockaway, I will not take the highways. And we go through Brooklyn, and we'll take, and because we don't want to go on because people get stuck on the highways on Friday. I know someone that went from the Lower East Side to Far Rockaway, and they were on the highway stuck on Shabbat. We rather take the longer route. It's just sometimes you take the longer route, but it's the more certain route than take the shorter route that could become the longer route. So you can't play around. Shabbat is one of the things you don't play around with. You know what I'm saying? And I always say, I have a line. I like to enjoy the ride. And if you're not going to leave with a nice amount of time extra, you're not enjoying the ride as much. You know what I'm saying? You get a little, you're looking at the clock, how much time and this, that. You know what I'm saying? David understands what I'm saying. You don't need the stress. I like, enjoy the ride. Okay. So that is regarding that the Gemara. Now we're continuing the Gemara on Yutet Amud Aleph on 19a. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Gamliel Noyegen Hayu. We were saying in the Mishnah, we said about when they would give clothing to the laundromat. So he said that there's a whole discussion when you give your clothing into the laundry. Does the clothing have to be completed before Shabbat? That the laundry has to be, that the cleaners has to have completed or as long as you give it into the laundry before Shabbat, if he decides to clean it on Shabbat, that is not my my concern, right? So that was a machloket in the Mishnah. The Beis Shammai was strict. He says you have to go ahead and you only can give it to the laundryman only if it's going to be finished before Shabbat. And Beis Hillel says it's fine. Then the Gemara said Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that his father's house, they had a custom, they would only give the clothing in 3 days before Shabbat. When it was linen clothing. Linen clothing is hard to clean. It's about a 3-day process to clean linen clothing. It's interesting. I went into the cleaners yesterday, and he says it's going to be ready on Friday noon. I mean, it's almost also like a 3-day. But if by the way, it's a mitzvah for Yom Tov. You got to make sure the clothing, you got to have nice clothing for Yom Tov. So if you gave it with less than 3 days for Shabbat, he's going to wash it on Shabbat, and therefore he did not want to give it. Now we say you can give it to the clothing before Shabbat. We're not telling him to wash on Shabbat. He wants to wash it on Shabbat. That's his business. I'm not instructing him to do it. But he did not give it. He was strict, and he made sure he gave it with enough time that he'll be finished the job before Shabbat. Now, the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Amrav Sadok, Kach hoya minhago shel Beit Rabbi Gamliel. This was the minhag of the house where 1984 on the right side. Amrav Sadok, Kach hoya minhago shel Beit Rabbi Gamliel, she'notnin klei lavon lekovetz. They gave the linen clothing to the launderer. Went how many? 3 days. Gimel Yom Kol Shabbat. V'tzfuyim, but if it was colored clothing does not need as much. When white clothing, to make something perfectly white requires much more than taking a colored clothing. You don't need. So colored clothing. I feel it better for Shabbat. Even on Friday, you could give in the clothing on Friday, because the Gentile could finish cleaning before Shabbat. It's only a 1-day clean. And we see from these words, it's much harder to clean white clothing than dark clothing, than colored clothing. Now, and therefore the payment, the charges, if someone charges more money for cleaning a white clothing, it's not that he's taking advantage of you. It's not. This is the proper, fact that you paid for a colored suit, a certain amount of money. Now he charges you more money for the other type of suit. Not that he's jipping you, but that is the appropriate. So we'll see more tomorrow about this.
They got you up so early,
Okay,
huh?
everybody. Good to see
I'm not
everybody.
installing my class.
What'd you say, Ralph?
I just got to my shul, Rabbi.
Oh, that's beautiful, Ralph.
Want to
Great.
see it?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes,
Have a
yes,
great
turn
day.
it around.
Thank you. Yes, take a look at it.
I can. How do I turn it around?
Okay.
Let's see.
It's all
How do I
That's
turn
it.
it around? How do I turn it?
Look at Joe. Good to see you.
Sure. No.
What time does it start every morning?
It's 6:45. Chodesh Tov, Rabbi. I gotta go.
Chodesh Tov, yeah. By the way, Chodesh Tov to everybody.